At midnight, a court ruling in Panama erased nearly 30 years of a Chinese company's port operations with the stroke of a pen. By sunrise, a new global shipping giant was announced as the seamless replacement. No transition period. No drawn-out negotiations. Just one operator out, another operator in less than 24 hours. But this isn't just a story about a contract dispute. It's about who really controls the arteries of global trade. The Panama Canal handles around 6% of the world's maritime commerce. Every delay costs millions. Every decision echoes across supply chains from Shanghai to Chicago. Behind the legal language lies something far bigger, a high-stakes chess match between Washington and Beijing, fought not with warships, but with contracts, code, and container terminals. If a port runs on software as much as steel, what happens when the software walks away? And if politics overrides contracts, who pays the real price? For more background information, watch our latest upload from yesterday titled, "Is Panama the Next Lithuania?" Way worse. Today we say something different about the case. Welcome back to DFTW, the right place to discuss global affairs through a different lens. Clara would like to compare Panama and Lithuania in this episode and explore why Panama will be put in a more adverse situation than Lithuania. When Panama's Supreme Court moved to invalidate CK Hutchison's long-standing port concession, the decision sent shockwaves far beyond the docks of Balboa and Cristobal. At first glance, it appeared to be a legal ruling, a constitutional interpretation, sovereign authority, or domestic review. But the speed of events, the immediate announcement of a replacement operator, and the broader geopolitical climate suggest something much larger unfolding beneath the surface. That is not just a dispute over a port contract. It is a case study in how infrastructure, geopolitics, digital systems, and great power competition collide in the 21st century. To understand the full picture, we need to step back and examine the layers, the legal dimension, the operational realities of modern ports, the US-China rivalry, Panama's economic vulnerabilities, and through the comparison with Lithuania, let us predict the potential responses available from Beijing and Hong Kong. Let's break it down carefully. First, let us review the legal shockwave when a 50-year concession turns to dust. CK Hutchison, through its subsidiary Hutchison Ports PPC, began operating the ports of Balboa on the Pacific side and Cristobal on the Atlantic side in 1997, the year when Hong Kong was returned to China. The concession was part of Panama's broader post-Canal transfer restructuring following the United States' 1999 handover of control of the Panama Canal under the Torrijos-Carter treaties. The arrangement was not unusual. Around the world, governments grant long-term concessions, often 25 to 50 years, for port development. These agreements typically include investment obligations, revenue-sharing mechanisms, infrastructure modernization targets, labor commitments, and renewal clauses. In 2021, after compliance reviews and audits, the concession was reportedly extended to 2047. Long-term infrastructure deals are built on predictability. Investors pour billions into cranes, quay extensions, automation, yard expansion, and IT integration because they assume the time horizon justifies the capital outlay. If a court declares such a concession unconstitutional decades into operation, the implications are profound. Investors question the reliability of the legal framework. Risk premiums increase for future projects. Arbitration claims become likely under bilateral investment treaties. Political risk insurance costs rise. Even if a sovereign state has the legal authority to invalidate a contract, the economic signal matters. Markets care less about who is right or wrong and more about whether commitments are durable. There's a common misconception that ports are simply docks, cranes, and containers. Modern container terminals are complex cyber-physical ecosystems. Their efficiency depends on layers of digital coordination that are often proprietary and deeply embedded. The brain of a typical advanced container terminal is the terminal operating systems, TOS, such as Navis N4 and other tailored proprietary systems, and it plays a crucial role in the coordination of a wide array of terminal operations. It usually contains modules that perform certain tasks. For instance, its vessel berthing schedules can efficiently manage vessel arrivals and dockings to optimize berth usage and minimize turnaround times. Its yard allocation algorithms can determine the most effective placement and retrieval of containers within the yard, enhancing space utilization. The container tracking feature can monitor container movements, ensuring accurate inventory management and reducing losses. Its equipment dispatching function helps streamline the dispatch of equipment, such as cranes and trucks, to ensure prompt, efficient container handling. The gate operations module facilitates the flow of trucks and cargo through entry and exit points, ensuring swift processing and minimizing delays. Without a robust terminal operating system, the terminal's ability to function efficiently and meet operational demands would be severely compromised. A port also needs automation and remote systems to improve efficiency. Automated stacking cranes autonomously move and stack containers, optimizing space and reducing the need for manual labor. Remote-controlled ship-to-shore cranes allow for the precise maneuvering of containers from vessels to the dock with minimal human intervention, increasing safety and speed. Optical character recognition gates use advanced imaging technology to read container numbers and automatically streamline gate operations. GPS-guided yard vehicles transport containers within the yard efficiently, significantly reducing operational delays. These automated systems rely on secure, encrypted communication networks, stringent firmware control, and regular software updates to ensure they operate safely and effectively. Ports must integrate seamlessly with multiple external entities, including customs authorities, ensuring compliance with international trade regulations and facilitating faster customs processes. A port also needs to collaborate closely with shipping companies to synchronize schedules and cargo handling. Freight forwarders and the port must work together to ensure efficient logistics and transport, enabling a seamless supply chain. The canal transit systems are essential in coordinating movements with waterway authorities to manage transit through shared routes. Insurance databases maintain critical data for risk management and compliance obligations. The list is not exhaustive, and disrupting any one layer of this complex ecosystem can have cascading effects, creating challenges throughout the logistics chain. When an operator departs unexpectedly, several key issues may arise, including control of system licenses, determining who holds the rights to use the software and hardware necessary for terminal operations. Ownership of source code, clarifying who owns the underlying code that governs the terminal's operating systems, which is crucial for future modifications and updates. Encryption key management, identifying who manages the encryption keys necessary for maintaining secure communications. And also cybersecurity responsibilities, ensuring a plan is in place for ongoing cybersecurity updates and threat protection. Replacing the central control system of a port, often referred to as the brain, can take several years. This lengthy process is not due to the unavailability of hardware, but rather the necessity for thorough redesign, extensive testing, rigorous certification, and careful integration, all of which must be conducted without interrupting daily operations. Ports are primarily assessed based on their turnaround time, which measures the duration it takes to unload and load vessels. Even minor disruptions can lead to significant financial repercussions, with potential losses exceeding millions of dollars per day. Efficient operations are, therefore, paramount for maintaining competitive advantage and ensuring the financial sustainability of port activities. The Panama Canal handles roughly 6% of global maritime trade. It is one of the most strategically significant choke points in the world, alongside the Suez Canal, Strait of Malacca, and Strait of Hormuz. For the United States, the canal carries additional weight, as it enables rapid naval redeployment between the Atlantic and Pacific, vital to U.S. East Coast Asia trade routes. It sits within what American strategists historically considered their sphere of influence. Although CK Hutchison is a Hong Kong-based multinational conglomerate, and not a Chinese state-owned enterprise, Washington has grown increasingly sensitive to Chinese commercial footprints near strategic infrastructure. Over the past decade, the U.S. has pressured allies over Huawei 5G infrastructure, opposed Chinese acquisitions of strategic ports in Europe, restricted semiconductor exports, and tightened foreign investment reviews. The concern is not just about ownership. It is about influence, access, and leverage. If a Chinese-linked firm operates both entry ports to the canal, even if the boss is not so patriotic as Beijing hopes, some U.S. policymakers may perceive a potential strategic vulnerability, although no wrongdoing has occurred. In great power competition, perception often drives policy. Panama has no choice but follow directives from big brothers, either Beijing or Washington. Beijing is too far, and Washington is too close. The Chinese are humble, and Americans are aggressive. So kicking China out is the only option. So Panama exits the BRI. So the Supreme Court ruled that Li Ka-shing's 50-year concession is illegal and against the country's constitution. So a Danish shipping giant takes over the ports in less than 24 hours after the ruling. Panama knows it has to follow the godfather, who is so impulsive as to kidnap another sovereign state's president and his wife. Panama's president is also afraid of becoming a resident of a U.S. jail. China's President Xi Jinping looks like a gentleman, but the U.S. national leader is not. Siding with the U.S. is the only option. However, choosing sides has consequences. Panama is not a diversified industrial powerhouse. Its economic pillars include canal toll revenue, logistics and port services, banking and financial services, and agricultural exports, bananas, coffee, seafood. The canal itself generates billions annually and contributes a significant share of government revenue. China has become one of Panama's largest trading partners since diplomatic recognition shifted from Taiwan to Beijing in 2017. If trade tensions escalate, Panama faces asymmetrical exposure. China can redirect imports, and 87% of Panama's agricultural exports will be at stake. And worst of all, Panama cannot easily replace large export markets. Canal usage patterns can shift gradually if China chooses other routes. Even small adjustments in shipping patterns or agricultural procurement could have outsized effects on a small economy. Lithuania is a good example. It allowed Taiwan to open a representative office under the name Taiwan rather than Taipei, which Beijing interpreted as a violation of the One China principle. China responded by downgrading diplomatic ties, restricting imports, and pressuring multinational companies informally not to source from Lithuania. As a result, Lithuania's exports dropped sharply, despite its EU membership, access to EU markets, political backing from Brussels, and WTO legal support. Panama does not belong to a comparable scale protective economic bloc. Lithuania's case concerned political signaling. Panama's case would involve core global logistics infrastructure. The stakes are different. As we said earlier, Panama is not the next Lithuania but worse. If Beijing chooses to respond forcefully but within economic and legal norms, several tools are available. First, international arbitration. Under investment treaties, CK Hutchison could pursue compensation claims based on the present value of its ports, including lost future earnings, disputed asset valuations, and damages. Arbitration cases can take years, but create uncertainty for the host country. Li Ka-shing is reportedly doing that. Second, technical disengagement. If proprietary systems are involved, withdrawal of IT support, software, engineering personnel, and vendor contracts could slow transition efforts. Not sabotage but termination of service. CK Hutchison has also done that. Third, state-level trade friction. China could increase inspection rates, adjust import standards, slow customs clearance, and rebalance procurement, among other measures that are difficult to prove as sanctions but can be economically powerful, as China punished Lithuania. China is supposedly taking such actions, but Panama has nobody at its back, unlike Lithuania. What the U.S. promised is merely lip service. Fourth, shipping realignment. Chinese shipping companies might optimize routes differently, adjust transshipment hubs, and reduce their dependence on specific terminals. Though the Panama Canal is geographically hard to bypass, long-term shipping strategies evolve. The Earth is not flat but round. Sailing eastward or westward makes little difference, as proved centuries ago. Fifth, financial cooling. Future Chinese infrastructure financing or trade facilitation projects could slow dramatically. Current ones can be suspended. Economic relationships cool without formal announcements. They are happening. For the replacement operator, Maersk, it operates globally and relies heavily on Chinese trade flows. Because a substantial portion of global container volume originates in China, Chinese ports, both domestic and international, are central to Maersk's Asia-Europe and Trans-Pacific routes. If Maersk is perceived as participating in a politically motivated replacement of a Chinese-linked operator, it may face regulatory friction, delayed approvals and commercial disadvantages. Not necessarily formal sanctions, but complications in the business climate. Every truck and container bearing the blue logo could be thoroughly inspected for allegations of drug trafficking or arms smuggling. The US has a textbook and China is a good student. In the 20th century and before, control meant territory. In the 21st century and beyond, control often means software. If the ousted operator controls authentication servers, system architecture, cybersecurity protocols, and firmware integration for equipment, physical infrastructure alone does not guarantee functionality for the new operator. That is not unique to Panama. It applies to telecom networks, smart grids, air traffic control systems, semiconductor manufacturing, and other areas where digital leverage changes the calculus of sovereignty. If Panama aligns with Washington to guarantee protection from economic fallout, that assumption carries risk. The United States prioritizes strategic interests. It does not routinely subsidize foreign governments for economic losses resulting from geopolitical positioning. If trade declines, Panama bears the cost. If arbitration drags on, Panama faces legal uncertainty. If shipping slows, Panama's canal revenues decline. Just as Lithuania chose to side with Washington against Beijing and unofficially recognized Taiwan, the US did almost nothing to help it out. Ironically, Lithuania signed a roughly $600 million export credit agreement with the US Export-Import Bank. This arrangement effectively functions like government-supported financing to help Lithuanian exporters and stabilize economic ties with a major partner. That was widely reported at the time as part of Washington's effort to support Lithuania economically and politically, helping offset the risk posed by China's punitive responses. Lithuania is not a beggar, but the US is a frugal patron. Even though Lithuania has the EU behind it, China's customs authorities refuse to clear certain Lithuanian imports and some EU products containing Lithuanian parts after the diplomatic dispute over Taiwan began in late 2021. Brussels and EU officials publicly stated that Chinese customs were blocking imports from the EU when those products contained components from Lithuania. It had the effect of restricting trade not just for Lithuanian exporters, but also for some EU companies with Lithuanian-linked supply chains. Additionally, China formally suspended imports of specific Lithuanian goods, including beef, dairy, and beer, citing purported sanitary or documentation issues. However, EU officials widely interpreted these moves as linked to political tensions. The EU filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 2022, arguing that these discriminatory measures were coercive and potentially in violation of trade rules. That case highlighted restrictions on exports from Lithuania and on EU products with Lithuanian content. According to a December 2025 report, the EU formally abandoned its WTO case after trade flows had partially resumed. However, Lithuanian exports to China remained far lower than before the dispute began. China maintained that it never issued an official ban document and denied an official boycott, even as trade fell dramatically. Overall, the restrictions were widely viewed internationally as a form of economic pressure related to diplomatic tensions, but the exact legal status and enforcement mechanisms were not always transparent. With Lithuania as the precedent, we can predict the dire situation Panama faces in the coming years. Small states navigating great power rivalry face difficult choices. The broader impact may extend beyond Panama. If investors perceive political vulnerability in infrastructure concessions, such as the Darwin port in Australia and the entry ports in Panama, and worry about judicial unpredictability and rapid operator replacement without transition, then risk premiums rise globally. Capital becomes more cautious. Emerging markets compete fiercely for infrastructure investment. Credibility matters. Global supply chains depend on predictability. Shipping delays create a chain reaction. Factory production schedules change. Retail inventories become limited. And freight rates increase. Even a 3% reduction in port efficiency can ripple through the system. The Panama Canal is already under stress due to drought-related transit limitations in recent years. Any additional instability compounds uncertainty. Today's episode is not just about a concession contract. It is about legal reliability, digital infrastructure control, great power rivalry, small state vulnerability, and economic leverage. Panama may regain nominal operational control. But if investor confidence weakens, if arbitration drags on, if trade tensions escalate, the cost could outweigh the symbolic victory. China does not need military responses to exert influence. Economic systems provide subtler tools. The modern battlefield is not defined by ships and flags. It is defined by contracts, servers, logistics flows, and market access. And in that arena, leverage often moves quietly until the consequences become impossible to ignore.